Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports.
This is always where I wanted to be, you know what I mean? I committed to Coach Saban and his standard. While Coach Saban may not be the coach anymore, his standard still lives through all of us, so we're going to continue to bring that standard back to Alabama. We're 7 points away from winning the national championship. We just got to keep everybody together and then at least give it until the spring. You got to give him a chance to prove himself and give him a chance to gain your trust and for you to trust him as well.
I should have had the little applause meter ready for that. I mean, that deserves some applause, right? Good evening, everybody, and welcome in to Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com, I'm WVUA 23 Sports Director Gary Harris. And you just heard from Alabama soon-to-be junior offensive guard Tyler Booker. Those comments came last week. He's been one of the strongest voices among the Alabama players wanting to hang in here and play for Alabama and give the new head coach, Kalen DeBoer, an opportunity to continue the tradition and standard rather than just jumping into the NCAA transfer portal the way some others have. As with any coaching change, Rodney, there are going to be players leaving, but Alabama and Coach DeBoer also working to add a few players, and that is the case. Before we talk about guys leaving, let's talk about some new additions, and you would expect that some Washington players would follow. Austin Mack, the quarterback, already having announced, and then over the weekend, center Parker Brailsford, freshman All-American last season. This guy started all 15 games, very athletic center, and then you speaking of athletic, Jahmyr Bernard, the wide receiver, 6'1", 205. He's got the size, he's got the speed, he's got the versatility. He can help you in the kick game. He can break tackles. So had over 700 all-purpose yards last season. So, Rodney, these are a couple of guys. We also mentioned the quarterback last week, Austin Mack, committed to Alabama. He's a freshman, so he's going to have an opportunity to kind of be developed here. So, yeah, because this is Alabama and because there's a lot of rival fan bases that are really trying to pile on, most of the emphasis has been on those players going into the portal. But Alabama's going to benefit here now, and then when the portal opens up again later in the spring, they'll probably benefit some more.
Yeah, I think, first of all, it's very important to remind people, Gary, that you can only have 85 on scholarship.
That's right.
Alabama's sitting at about 79 right now, somewhere around there. So it's not like they have – I have people calling me saying, are we going to field the team next year? It's not like they have 35, 40 guys on scholarship. They have 79. They only have like 6 open spots. Now, again, some guys may still leave. Some guys can leave after the spring. But they'll be right at that 85 mark.
All right, let's talk about Parker Brailsford. Alabama needs a center with Seth McLaughlin heading up to Ohio State. As I said, this guy, a 15-game starter. Now, a lot of people are going to look at his weight. He played at like 278. But he's athletic, and he can add a few pounds if he needs to. But let's be honest, I think sometimes in the modern game of football, we've got too hung up on guys being 300 pounds. The best thing that you need to be able to do is play. Number one, center is a different kind of offensive line position. I remember Dwight Stevenson, probably the best ever played at Alabama. He never was over maybe 240 pounds when he played at Alabama, 255 with the Dolphins, and he's one of the greatest to ever do it. What do you think of Brailsford?
Well, first of all, when you look at this video, you'll see they require their offensive linemen to get out in space a lot. So his ability to run is a real key. I talked to a former SEC lineman this week actually about him, about his size. He said, look, yeah, he's a little bit undersized, maybe could get a little bit bigger, but he said with the style of offense they're going to run, he's fine. He's a guy that there you see him running right there, getting downfield, leading the screen pass. They do a lot of these types of plays. But Gary said the length of his arms, he's got great leverage, gets great leverage. So he's a guy that I think, in spite of his size, he's got a lot of really good qualities that can help him become very successful.
All right, the receiver, Jahmyr Bernard, he was in line to become Washington's #1 receiver this year. Of course, played with a lot of other great receivers this past season. But, again, I mean, he's what you're looking for in a receiver. He's 6'1", he's over 200 pounds, but he's fast, good kick returner. You can hand him the ball. He can break tackles. I mean, listen, Alabama's loaded with good football players, but the wide receiver is a position that has taken a hit, even going back to during the season in terms of the portal and graduation. This is a welcome addition right here, Bernard.
Yeah, his versatility. There you see him on kick return. He also returned punts, a very explosive player. He was a guy that this year It's his first year at Washington. He spent the year before at Michigan State, so he was a transfer there. He was really their third or fourth receiver, but the guys in front of him going to be top picks in the NFL draft coming up. He was going to be their number one guy this year at Washington. So, but he's going to bring a lot. You mentioned all the things that he brings in terms of athleticism, his ability as a receiver, but I also think, Gary, his experience in this offense. He's a guy that immediately steps into that wide receiver room, and he knows what they're looking for in this offense.
Indeed. So some nice additions. Also, though, as we said, plenty of subtractions and probably to it. Some of these guys that Alabama's losing, hadn't even played much, factor in. But Caleb Downs factors in anywhere. Yeah, he's a National Freshman of the Year. He's one of the best safeties in the country. I would argue that had he returned to Alabama, you could make a case that he was Alabama's best returning football player, regardless of position. No other way around it. This is disappointing, particularly after the kind of year he'd had here. He was set up for success, going to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft in 2 years regardless, but he chose to go to Ohio State. Rodney, what do you make of that decision? And listen, everybody's got to do what's best for them. I understand that. I still can't quite understand why he left. Maybe there's some NIL money involved. I'm sure that there is, but he had it here. He had it all here at Alabama.
Yeah, he did. And again, I think part of that too is, his position coach T-Rob, Travaris Robinson, left. I think that could have probably played some role in it. But again, you talk about the NIL. You talk about what Ohio State's doing with that. Could that have had an impact? Yeah, I think it certainly could have. I thought he was in a great position here, though, Gary. I'm like you. I really don't understand it. I think this defense that Kane Womack's going to bring would play right into what he does. I think he had an opportunity to have a great finishing of his career the next couple of years here.
And Julian Sayin, the quarterback, it is what it is. Alabama likes him a lot, and he's a guy that has a ton of talent. He was the previous staff's number one quarterback recruit, as we were looking at some defensive video there. But Julian Sayin is a guy that has never played it down here, hadn't even got into school good here. And he may turn out to be a really good player, but Austin Mack, as we said, is coming in. I like Julian Sayin, loved him in high school, but at the same time, he's never been on the field. So it's a loss. But right now, he was a guy that was, looking at playing down the road anyway.
Yeah, I think when you look at that quarterback room, obviously you have Jalen Milroe coming back. You still have Ty Simpson on the roster, who's a very talented player. He's a 5-star rated quarterback coming out of high school. And the buzz all fall was, the guy to really watch for the future is Dylan Lonergan, who was a freshman, will be a redshirt freshman next year. A really talented kid. And you mentioned Julian Sayin decided to transfer out. But the day before he announces it, Austin Mack, who's a guy that a lot of people think this guy could be one of the best quarterback prospects in the country, 6'6", 225, has all the tools. But the thing to really remember about him, Gary, with all those things said, is he spent a year in the system there at Washington. Kalen DeBoer, Ryan Grubb, they know him really, really well. They know what he can do. So there's a comfort level there on both sides that I think really, when you start looking towards the future, Austin Mack can certainly be a guy that will challenge for the job.
And remember, Bill O'Brien is the new offensive coordinator at Ohio State. He helped recruit Julian Sayin when O'Brien was at Alabama. Also disappointed in Caden Proctor for the reasons that Alabama started him as a true freshman. He went through a lot of growing pains, man. At times, quite frankly, looked overmatched. By the end of the year, he's playing pretty good football. And he goes back to Iowa. I understand it. At the same time, it's disappointing to invest so much in a young player and help develop him, and then he leaves when he would have been the starter at left tackle if he'd returned.
Yeah, I think sometimes when you come that far away from home, too, there's a lure to go back. There's a little bit of a homesickness maybe. And he did an outstanding job. Look, he made a lot of progress. He's a guy that's got worlds of talent. But, Gary, in this offense now, I'm going to tell you, he would have really been forced to lose some weight, get a little bit quicker on his feet. Pass protection's a real key, and that's something that he had struggled in.
And an opportunity for Elijah Pritchett.
That's right.
Who has a ton of athletic ability.
Right. And some others, too. A lot of young offensive tackles that they recruited in the previous class.
All right. So those are the latest comings and goings as far as the transfer portal is concerned. And still to come on Tider Insider TV, we'll talk about Alabama men's basketball as the Tide play in a very difficult SEC schedule, lost to Tennessee. Tomorrow night, the only unbeaten team in the conference, Auburn, comes to Coleman Coliseum. And Alabama sophomore golfer Nick Dunlap became the first amateur to win a PGA Tour event in more than 30 years. 33 to be exact. The last guy to do it, Phil Mickelson, lefty. So what's Nick Dunlap going to do? Well, the future is wide open in the world is his oyster right now. And we'll be getting to your phone calls, emails, and tweets. As always, the phone number there on your screen, 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. Or you can email us, TITV@WVUA23.com. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide. The award-winning Tider Insider TV will return right after this break. And welcome back to TITV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Alongside Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Well, over the weekend, history for University of Alabama men's sophomore golfer Nick Dunlap. All Nick Dunlap did as a 20-year-old amateur is go out and win a professional tour event. He won on the PGA Tour as an amateur. It's the first time since Phil Mickelson back in 1991. He took the crown at the American Express. Dunlap won the 72-hole tournament by one stroke. He shot 29 under par, including a 60 on Saturday. He becomes the youngest PGA Tour winner since Jordan Spieth, and the youngest amateur since 1910. And now he's got all kinds of options. Because he was the U.S. Am champion, he already was qualified to play the Masters and the Open Championship and the U.S. Open. But now, if he wants to, he can turn pro immediately. Let me bring Rodney in here. This is an interesting situation. I know with all the NIL talk, he's got to deal with Adidas and some others, but he just won an event that would have paid him $1.5 million, Rodney, had he been a professional. He doesn't get a penny of that. Now he has to decide, does he want to come back and play this season at Alabama, knowing that he's still going to have NIL opportunities. There's going to be a lot of companies reaching out to him. You can bet on that after he just won that event out in Southern California. Or he could still play in some selected events as an amateur, or he could just go ahead and turn pro and start playing for pay right away. He's going to have a press conference on Thursday morning, we assume, to discuss his options. But, again, for people that aren't golfers, imagine a college quarterback as a sophomore going into an NFL game and leading a team to a Super Bowl. It's almost unimaginable. For him to do what he did against the best players in the world, this is an amazing accomplishment.
Yeah. What'd you say, 20?
20 years old. Just turned 20 years old, too.
It's amazing. Yeah, you're right. It is. I mean, I look at him. I mean, he's starstruck right there. I mean, I guess it's hard to believe, but what a poised guy, to be able to go out and do that, Gary, and all the pressure that he had. I mean, there is a tremendous amount of pressure, obviously, but the question is, like you said, his future, and what does he decide to do? And, when you look at it, these are a lot of options. You mentioned the NIL, the opportunities that he's going to have, and, look, I don't know that you can go wrong either way, right?
You can't go wrong either way. It's a win-win. Obviously, for Alabama men's golf, if he comes back and plays this year, they're one of the favorites to win the national championship. Without him, they're a good squad, but clearly not at the same level. But he can't go wrong. His teammates and his head coach, Jay Seawell, are going to support his decision either way. The thing about it is he's already now qualified to play on the PGA Tour. So he could come back and play this season for Alabama, then immediately turn pro when the season was over and start. So, again, we'll find out on Thursday, I think, at a press conference. But congratulations to Nick Dunlap. And what a shot in the arm, not just for Alabama men's golf, but the University of Alabama. Nick Saban was on the broadcast Sunday. They interviewed him. It was an Alabama infomercial all weekend long out there in Southern California. All right, let's talk some Bama basketball. Last Saturday, the Crimson Tide had a 6-game winning streak on the line, but they went to Knoxville and got it handed to them pretty good by a big, strong, veteran Tennessee team. Really experienced. Tennessee's one of these teams. They've got these guys that are 24, 25 years old. We've talked about this before. Alabama's Achilles heel, as a lot of teams are, against these kind of teams. But playing a big, strong, physical, experienced basketball team has been too much for them for a lot of the season, and it continued on Saturday in Knoxville.
Well, I mean, again, road in the SEC, it's really tough to do. I mean, Alabama started off pretty well in the SEC, obviously, but you go on the road against a team, like you said, Gary, experienced team, quality team like Tennessee. I mean, these nights happen. Again, I think you have to you look forward to what's coming up, and you've got Auburn, tomorrow? So, you just have to move forward.
Yeah, 22 turnovers. I mean, listen, it was a beatdown. It was a 20-point loss, and it was, the final score was indicative of the game. Alabama was really never in it. As you mentioned, they'll look to bounce back tomorrow night. And let's get to Coach Talk, and it is about Alabama basketball. Head Coach Nate Oates now previews the matchup tomorrow night against Auburn. Remember, Auburn is the only unbeaten team now in the SEC at 5-0. and Auburn is 4-1. But this Auburn team, as good as Kentucky is, as good as Tennessee is, the Tigers might be playing as well as anybody in the conference.
The last 3 years, the regular season championships have been totally in the SEC, have been totally in Alabama, in the state of Alabama. We've got 2 of them. They've got 1. They've done a good job. I think somebody told me in the last 6 years, since 2017, there's been 9 first-round picks in the Alabama-Auburn games.
In other words, Rodney, Alabama and Auburn both have been really good for the last few years, and this rivalry has been taken up a notch. It's always been a strong rivalry in basketball, you know that, but there have been times when both programs have not been good. They're both good now. 2 dynamic, charismatic head coaches, a lot of athletic play. Alabama's turning out first-round draft picks left and right. Auburn has a very talented roster, but like Tennessee, Auburn is experienced. They're an older basketball team. They've got size. They're good defensively. This has been the kind of teams that Alabama has struggled against. But I know this tomorrow night, Alabama's going to be ready to play. They're going to play hard.
Yeah, there's a lot of intensity. I mean, look, I think when you look at the last couple of years with Nate Oates here, you've got Bruce Pearl. I mean, the intensity in these games has been off the charts. And that's really what I would expect tomorrow.
Yeah, and that is going to be a wide open, sold out Coleman Coliseum tomorrow night for Alabama and Auburn basketball. All right, we're going to take a timeout. When we come back, though, we're going to start getting into our phone calls. There is the number, 205-348-9882. Call now, Tider Insider Nation. We want to hear from you next. And welcome back to TITV with Rodney Orr. I'm Gary Harris, and our Bama in the NFL segment, if we can get to it, we will, but we got to save some time for phone calls. We've had a ton of information tonight, so let's get out on the phone lines, and Rick leads us off over in Brent tonight. Hey, Rick.
Hey, how are y'all tonight?
Doing well.
Hey, when did the portal start? Was that with Maurice Smith in Georgia? And somebody needs to tell Isaiah Bonds that he's made the worst decisions he ever made.
All right, Rick. No, the portal, the old transfer rules, you had to get a waiver to be eligible immediately. At one time in the SEC, it was a 2-year sit-out, and it was always a 1-year sit-out. Portal's just like the NIL. It's just in the last couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah, Maurice Smith, no, I mean, that was...
He transferred under the old rules.
Yeah, sure did. Followed Kirby Smart over there. But I agree with you. It's not a good deal. And also, as far as Isaiah Bonds concerned, it really kind of surprising that he took that, Rick, and went to Texas. But, we'll see.
All right, let's get to our email question of the day, brought to you, as always, by KDM Service Corporation. KDM Service Corporation, when it comes to heating and air conditioning, serving your family like our family. Under the last 2 coordinators, it felt like the offense didn't have consistent flow. What causes that? Perry in Tuscaloosa. It's a fair question, Perry. I think sometimes it's personnel. I mean, this past year, Alabama had a new quarterback, Tommy Rees. I thought a lot of times under Bill O'Brien, the offense was actually, if you look at the numbers, Alabama's offense was really good. They produced a Heisman Trophy winner at quarterback. I will say this. You're bringing in a guy now as a head coach with his offensive coordinator that has a reputation for having a very smooth and offense that gets into a flow. So if what you say is true, and I'll let Rodney chime in here, maybe they will get into a little more rhythm consistently this year on that side of the ball.
Yeah, I think, first of all, going back a couple of years ago, Bryce Young, I thought in 2021, obviously had a Heisman Trophy year. As a new offensive coordinator, that was Bill O'Brien's first year. And then they had some injuries there with the receivers. I mean, when you have injuries with your top receivers, you really don't have guys that step up. That's going to cause a lot of issues. Then, of course, the next year in 2022, he had the shoulder injury. That really set him back, set the offense back. I don't think Bryce was the same until that Kansas State game in the Sugar Bowl. He threw 5 touchdown passes. And then this past year, Gary talked about it. I mean, personnel. You had a young offensive line. You had a quarterback that really didn't have a lot of experience. I mean, I think when you look at all of the circumstances that were involved last year, I thought Tommy Rees did a really good job.
All right, thanks for the phone calls and emails. We'll have more coming up next when we return to TITV. 205-348-9882 is the number. We are going to get to Bama in the NFL. What about the Detroit Lions going to a conference championship game for only the second time in their history? Never been to a Super Bowl. Jahmyr Gibbs is a big reason why. I mean, he's just incredible. Think back to last year. As good as he was at Alabama, you kept thinking they could have gotten more out of him. But he does it on both ends. And then the Lions, as we said, they're going to play San Francisco out in the NFC Championship game. Also want to mention Will Anderson Jr., though his team came to a end, he is the Pro Football Writers of America Defensive Rookie of the Year, Rod. How about that? 7 sacks, which is a Texans franchise record, and had a great year. Of course, C.J. Stroud, his teammate, is the Offensive and Rookie of the Year, the Ohio State quarterback, with Will Anderson Jr. and Jahmyr Gibbs, a couple of Bama rookies coming up big. All right, let's get to another email question, Rod. This is from Paul in Hoover. Has Coach DeBoer's daughter, Alexis, met with Patrick Murphy? Can she enter the transfer portal? She's a great softball player, committed to Washington. I think she's still in high school, Rod. Am I correct on that?
I think so.
And
yeah, I think she's still going to Washington, my understanding.
Yeah, she is, but I don't even think she's in college yet.
Yeah.
I'll have to double check on that. But you know what? You never know down the road. She is a terrific softball player. I think she's like a top 50 player in the country, and the whole family's going to be here. But right now, her plans are to play at Washington, but we will keep you up to date on that. All right, phone lines are open. If we want to squeeze one in, everybody's always complaining they can't get through. Well, you can get through right now, 205-348 WVUA. All right, real quickly, Rodney, before we do get to the break, Gunnar Gundy tweeting out, that's Mike Gundy's son, former Oklahoma State quarterback, had gone to the portal, committed to Ohio, that he's coming to Alabama. He tweeted that himself today on social media.
Yeah. Again, I don't know what the circumstances are in terms of possibly walking on. I mean, you look at this quarterback room, it's pretty full, but you know what, Gary, you always want quarterbacks here that have some experience. You can never have enough arms.
Yeah, a lot of experience, a lot of football knowledge if he does indeed wind up here in Tuscaloosa. All right, we're going to come back and wrap up this edition of TITV on another kind of rainy evening in Tuscaloosa, but it's still pretty here in the City of Champions. We're back after this. Brandon Miller, the rookie out of Alabama, is really heating up lately. Last night, he had 27 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, and 1 steal, and went 11 of 13 from the field, 3 of 4 from three-point range, and a 128-125 victory over the T-Wolves. What makes it even more impressive, the T-Wolves had the best record in the West, and they were up 15 going to the fourth quarter. Minnesota was. Charlotte overcame that and also overcame Karl Anthony Towns, a former Kentucky standout, having 62 points for the T-Wolves last night. Big win for the Hornets, and Brandon Miller now really starting to post some numbers. That's his 3rd straight game over 20 points. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of TITV. Update on the Gunnar Gundy situation. I don't know. I mean, it's been tweeted out by a lot of people. Rodney says it might be a fake Twitter account. We'll just have to wait and see what happens there. This social media is outrageous at times. All right, we want to remind you that if you missed any of tonight's show, you can catch a replay tonight at 10:30. Or online anytime at WVUA23.com. We're going to leave you with Alabama gymnastics. They're off to a great start this season. Have a great evening, everybody.